Well, it's official. This is the worst Chicago White Sox team ever. Let's put some perspective on it next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts, as Locked On White Sox is available via audio on places such as Apple and Spotify. Well, it is Labor Day, and the White Sox just set the franchise mark for the most losses in a season after getting swept by the New York Mets over the weekend. Let's put that into perspective in the first segment. Then rosters have expanded by 2. I'll discuss how the Sox made the correct choice with one of those promotions and why the roster expansion rules should be modified to accommodate terrible teams like the White Sox. And then let's stick with the only place that there's hope, the team's prospects. So I'll discuss kind of how Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz did over the weekend with my weekly Minor League Monday report. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, 107 losses is where the White Sox are at on September 2nd. And it'll likely be 108 whenever today's game with the Baltimore Orioles wrap up. And this is the worst team in Sox history by a long shot. And I know I've talked about it almost daily about it, but let's really put this historically awful team into perspective of just how miserable they truly are. Think about this. In 19 years, owner Jerry Reinsdorf has gone from being the man who paired up Kenny Williams and Ozzie Guillen, who ended up leading this club to a World Series win, and being one of the few owners who could claim having an NBA and an MLB championship ring, to now being one of the worst owners in sports. He actually is the worst owner in sports. I'm declaring it. I hear from you every day, and I'm officially declaring it now. I mean, he's worse than the A's owner because Jerry's actually trying to win, but he can't do it because he thinks baseball should still be played and players should still be paid like it was in the 1950s. And that's a huge reason why the Sox became a rotting carcass after winning the 2021 AL Central. And this team is being run by a general manager who's in way over his head in Chris Getz. So think about that. Poorly led. That's going to get you 107 losses in a 124-year history. This has never happened before. There are people in pine boxes who never saw it be this bad. I mean, you got now baby boomers who can say, oh my gosh, it actually got worse, when they probably said it in 1970. The Sox have won 39 games with Getz officially in charge. 39. Put that into perspective. The guy that was supposed to turn things around very quickly, and that was announced a year and a day ago, is 39 and 126 with him running the club. He got duped into a 3-team deal where his crown jewel in return, Miguel Vargas, cannot hit, while Michael Kopech is dominating for the Dodgers. You know, he didn't get the greatest return at the trade deadline. So now the Sox are way, way, way behind in terms of getting back to being competitive. Like, you got to think about it now. It's going to be probably 2028. Getz put together a bullpen where 4 of the 9 arms that were on the opening day roster have been DFA'd. Think about that too. Just how bad this team was poorly constructed and how it just continued to crumble and crumble and crumble. And his goal to improve the defense failed miserably, as it's one of the worst in baseball. So really, to put things into perspective of how Jerry, and yes, we have to lump in previous leadership, Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, as they helped rot this franchise. And then Chris Getz keeps digging beyond 6 feet to keep burying this franchise. You have to look at how bad these numbers are. The great CHGO White Sox podcast, they tweeted this out. at CHGO_White Sox. History. The 2024 White Sox break the 1970s team record for most losses in a single season. 100 losses and counting. Shut out 15 times, swept 22 times, 51 blown leads, owned the 3 longest losing streaks in MLB this year. Think about that. 3 of the longest losing streaks belong to the White Sox. The White Sox have been around again since 1900, and they never had an 0-10 homestand until now. They went 0-10 on this homestand. They were swept in 3 consecutive series. So again, putting this into perspective of just how bad it is. Teams walk in and they know, especially contending teams like the Mets, they walked in and they knew we're going to stay in this race. You even had owner Steve Cohen saying, I think I'm going to watch the Braves and Phillies because they still have a legitimate shot at getting to the playoffs. And sorry, Cubs fans, White Sox, they're just not going to help you out. Just not going to happen. And this losing streak, again, they're on now a 10-game losing streak, the 3rd double-digit losing streak of the season. This losing streak is probably going to hit at least 16 or 18 games because it's highly unlikely they shock the Orioles or the Red Sox, which is the next 6 games they have to play as they're now on a road trip. And that will barely register as the longest losing streak in team history. Why? Well, this club already broke the single-season losing streak record with the first double-digit losing streak. So they already set a new franchise mark in futility. Then the all-time losing streak record with the second losing streak. And that second losing streak tied the AL record. You now can put the 1988 Baltimore Orioles in the same context as the 2024 White Sox. The only difference is the Baltimore Orioles started out 0-21. And got their first win, ironically, against the White Sox. This team has won just 7 games during July and August. They went 16-62 during the meteorological summer. Because meteorologists will tell you, summer is technically from June 1st to August 31st. So basically, during summer, the Sox won 16 games. And only 7 of them came during the dog days. I mean, again, put this into perspective. This team is 47.5 games back of Cleveland in the division race, but they're even buried even worse in the cellar as they're 39 games back of Detroit for 4th place. They can't even make a run. Like, say they went on a miraculous 24-0 run, they're still going to be in dead last by a country mile. That's, again, some more perspective of just how terrible things have been. And it's ironic that the New York Mets swept the Sox to get this franchise record of 107 losses, which broke the 1970 mark. Because the next futile mark that the Sox can break is the 1962 New York Mets. And if you aren't a regular of the show, if you are a regular of the show, you should know what the record is for losses. But if you're just one of those people that are checking in for the first time, the 62 Mets set the record with 120 losses that year in a 162-game schedule. And that was an expansion team. And at least they had Casey Stengel, the iconic manager, to keep things entertaining. The Sox are not entertaining. They don't have any personality. I mean, think about it. They won a division title just 3 years ago and rotted so badly that they're on track to easily break the 62 Mets mark, where the Mets were just an expansion team. 14 more defeats breaks the record. 14. They need to go 12-12 just to go 43-119. And not sure how that happens, considering, again, for more perspective, the Sox have a minus 291 run differential. The closest team to them in 29th place is the Rockies at minus 211. That just shows you just how bad the Sox are. They're last in runs scored at 420, and they would need to score 100 more and have the Marlins score no runs at all just to tie them for 29th. Only the Rockies have a worse team ERA, and it's really hard to see the Sox winning 12 games this month when the pitching staff's combined F4 is 1.1 and the lineup's combined F4 is 1.7. I mean, there's no value on this team. That's the other thing you got to take into perspective. There is no value. The lineup has no hitter with an F4 over 1. Garrett Crochet is at 4.1, and somehow Chris Flexen is still at 1.1, but otherwise no other player on the active roster is over 1. No other player, again, I'll repeat that, on the active roster has an F4 over 1. And it lacks superstar talent capable of carrying the team. Luis Robert Jr., he's got the talent, but he's struggling mightily. Crochet, who set the team record for consecutive strikeouts yesterday to start a game, he isn't allowed to pitch more than 4 innings. So you don't even have a stopper in your rotation. And again, it's September 2nd. And the Sox are already at this terrible mark. And making it worse is Getz is so resistant to taking advantage of using the only benefit. There's only one benefit for being this bad. Is you can get a risk-free look at a lot of your younger players that could potentially contribute at the big league level. If you got guys at AA and AAA that even project to even being utility players, you can get a risk-free look and not have to worry about your wins and losses. And guess what? They don't do that. And again, I'm going to die on this hill, but for perspective about just how bad this is, everybody that wants this, the historic losing record to hang on owner Jerry Reinsdorf's head around his neck is completely underestimating his high threshold for embarrassment. And 2, there is no top draft pick in next year's draft due to the new lottery rules. And yes, you do want to have a top pick because that would give you the best chance to get your franchise savior in the Bobby Witt Jr. mold. And 3, I doubt Chris Getz could find him. And I also doubt he's going to get canned. Although Getz in the front office did make one good move with the expanded rosters this month, and I'll discuss why promoting Jairo Iriarte was the right call, along with having him coming out of the bullpen. Next on Locked On White Sox. Hey, you've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, FanDuel has something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon game out of market. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Maybe you're done playing the White Sox and you want to move over to the Chicago Bears. FanDuel has some great lines for futures. The Bears are plus 3,500 to win the Super Bowl, plus 340 to win the NFC North, and some really good numbers on the exact order for the division. The safe one to play, obviously, is the plus 600 with the Lions in first, Packers in second, Bears in third, Vikings in fourth. But say you think the Bears defense will meet those high expectations and Caleb Williams is going to be the real deal, and maybe the Lions, hey, they fall off. Plus 1,300 for the Bears in first, Pack in second, Lions in third, Vikings in fourth. Parlays, props, and futures are what I always think FanDuel is great for. So especially if those are your strengths, you want to play FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sports book. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox start a 3-game road set with the Baltimore Orioles later today. The first pitch is at 2:05 p.m. Central Standard Time. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit that like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcast. As Locked On White Sox is available via audio on places such as Apple and Spotify. So again, like after I'm done here, I'm going to go cut my grass on Labor Day. If you need somebody to kind of help you through cutting the grass and getting through this unbelievably miserable season, put me on. I'd appreciate it. So rosters expanded by 2 for September. And first, I would love for next year to see MLB allow exceptions for teams out of the race to be allowed to go back to the old school where they could have 40 active players in September just to get a free look. And I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But what I really want to focus in on this segment is the Sox did make the right call in promoting pitcher Jairo Iriarte as one of their 2 picks. But I did see some folks are upset in Sox Twitter world that he's going to come out of the bullpen, but I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly acceptable with that. That I think is actually a sound plan. First of all, the Sox have so many prospects in their system that they can develop into effective starters that not everyone's going to make this rotation. I mean, the one nice thing that the Sox have is their pitching depth in their system. And right now, the bullpen has just been downright pathetic. And you've heard me say that a couple of times. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's just been so bad that I actually want to see if Iriarte can at least reach his floor as being a very good reliever. That was one of the things that when he came over in the Dylan Cease deal, everybody was very high on Drew Thorpe and his changeup. The only worry was, again, his velocity. And with Jairo Iriarte, a lot of people, a lot of the scouts were all saying the consensus is that he should at very least be a pretty good closer or high leverage reliever. And the Sox are talking about picking spots for him and maybe it just being one inning. I wouldn't mind still leveraging that stretched out arm of his and giving him some big league innings by having him piggyback Garrett Crochet. I know they've been pairing Garrett Crochet with Touki Toussaint, but again, you get nothing from Touki Toussaint. He's a veteran. He's not going to be on this team next year. If he is, something is seriously wrong with this the talent evaluation in the front office. And it is the hill I'm dying on, but I want to see dramatic change the rest of the month of the bullpen. So I'm pleased that the Sox are giving their fifth best prospect a chance there. His floor, again, very good closer or high leverage arm. He could be, maybe in that Josh Hader mold, a guy who can pitch multi-innings when he first started out. So I want to see that. And also, he's under team control for years. So it doesn't mean you can't revisit him being a starter someday. I would just love to get a glimpse to see if he could be worthy of building the bullpen around. You could say, oh, that's a bold take to build a bullpen around a guy who, was recently pitching at AA Birmingham. But again, his floor is supposed to be a very good bullpen arm. His ceiling could be potential ace. I get that. But what would you rather have? Him pitching every 5 days or him pitching maybe 3 or 4 times a week? We'll see. But there's not one arm in that bullpen, too, that you can say that is your foundational piece. That's something we can use going forward. There's nobody right now that you could say, hey, on this rock, I will build a bullpen. It's not going to happen. So let's see what Iriarte can do. And plus, my fear is Getz is going to take his limited financial resources in the offseason and sign bullpen arms, much like his predecessor, Rick Hahn, did. That's one of the reasons why this franchise rotted. And that's the best way to describe it. Rotted, decayed, crumbled. I mean, just anything that you could apply to something just being destroyed to pieces from 2021, apply it to one of the reasons is Rick Hahn's investment into the bullpen, taking limited financial resources that should have went to second base or right field to make the lineup even more potent, went into the bullpen, and a lot of those arms were bad. They weren't effective, or they were rehabbing. And I think he's going to do that with the intention of flipping those arms at the deadline, as you saw how bullpen arms fetched a nice return at this year's deadline. But the one thing is trade deadlines are fluid. Things change, things swing. Maybe next year teams are going to be like, you know what? I'll trade you my top 50 prospects. We don't know. And teams might be like, you know what? I'm not going to give up a top 5 prospect for a bullpen arm like we saw what the San Diego Padres did. There's only so many teams that we saw at the trade deadline that are willing to spend big time prospect capital to get ahead. And the problem is you keep punting on properly addressing, say, second base. You're still trying to replace Ray Durham, who left town in 2002. I mean, Jacob Gonzalez has not been hitting that great at AA, your former first round pick. And you really need a whole darn new infield, except maybe first base. Andrew Vaughn, fine, you can keep him there. And say you got Willy Adames on the free agent market, good clubhouse guy, hits for power. I'd rather see them spend money on that guy. Who at least might, even Anthony Santander would be a nice signing. Use the money to improve the lineup to at least give yourself a way to be better next year. Although being better by next year would be like, say, winning 70 games, but give yourself a chance to actually score some runs. But nope, I have that fear that he's going to invest a lot of money in bullpen arms, especially how, hey, then I can just flip him at the deadline. And you already saw how he got taken to the cleaners at the last deadline. You really have faith that Chris Getz is going to be able to leverage assets to get building blocks to be good by 2027? I don't. And then again, my also fear is, with the infield, you do have some guys where, yes, you can serve some youth. But I could see Chris Getz not being very patient and going out and signing more guys like Tommy Pham and Robbie Grossman that'll take away playing time from younger players like Dominique Fletcher and Brooks Baldwin. So are you sensing a theme in today's show? I don't trust Chris Getz. He built this terrible team, and yes, there's contributing factors, but he's the one that was the GM that made these final signings to put together a terrible, terrible roster. But at least Jairo Iriarte going to the pen makes sense to me. Zach DeLoach, he was the other call-up, and fine. He was hitting better recently in Charlotte. I'd still prefer Brian Ramos getting the call-up. But if Brooks Baldwin's hand is a problem, you do need Miguel Vargas to play third. However, I would love to see MLB make exceptions for non-contending teams to be able to still expand to the old 40 players that you could do in September, so they can get at least a free look at some of their prospects in big league games. That was the whole point of the September call-up, at least for non-contending teams. You basically get a free look at what some of your prospects can do. And my proposal is simple. If you have, say, a contending team versus a non-contending team, let the if the contending team agrees to allow it, let the non-contending team expand to 40. You could do 40 to 26. You think Baltimore's going to have a problem beating the White Sox if the White Sox had 13 more players? I don't. Baltimore's going to whip up on them. Would I love to eat my words? Sure, but I'm not very confident about it. Although I doubt teams would allow that, since the principle of limiting the rosters to just 2 expanded spots was contenders could not get refreshed bullpen arms with the expansion. But hey, still leave it out there. Or the other proposal is if you got 2 teams already eliminated from the playoffs or well under 500 and getting close to elimination, they can expand their rosters for that series. All you're doing is paying per diem money and a prorated game check. Okay? To all those billionaire owners, I think you can afford it. And the Sox, the Sox versus the A's and the Sox versus the Angels, those clubs in those series should be allowed to expand so they can get at least some looks at some of their prospects in a big league game. It's not going to hurt the final standings if the Sox could say bring up Colson Montgomery in any of those series just for a peek. I'm sure the A's would love to see what some of their prospects could do that are nearing the big league level. You give them a free look. It's not like a lot of these, it's not like a lot of people are watching these games anyway. You really think the Sox and the A's are going to draw? Ooh. Well, let's stick with the hope of this team, and that is the minor league pitching, as I want to focus on Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz's starts last week on this week's Minor League Monday report that is up next on Locked On White Sox. Although the Sox and the A's might not be a huge draw and the Sox might be downright awful, now might be the best time to actually go to a White Sox game, since they have the Cleveland Guardians and the San Diego Padres coming into town this month. 2 teams in the playoff race, and there's a chance to see Dylan Cease make his return to the guaranteed rate mound. Might want to check that out. And if he is slated to start, and you want to go, use the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Pick filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Maybe you don't want to go to a Sox game, even though the bathroom and concession lines will be light. Game Time has exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And again, the White Sox start a 3-game road set with the Baltimore Orioles later today. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all my everydayers who stuck with me. We just passed the 1,800 subscriber mark on YouTube. Awesome. Tell your friends, tell your family that, hey, I know this guy. He's going to help me get through. He's helping me get through this terrible season. And if you're a White Sox fan, tell the White Sox fan friends, he can help you get through it too. He's going to inform you. Maybe he'll make you laugh. Maybe he'll challenge you. but he's there for you every single day, at least Monday through Friday. I got to take the weekends off, guys. And I actually went down, visited my dad. He's in a rehab facility right now, physical, medical rehab, not like alcohol or drugs. He had hip replacement surgery, and then he had a very nasty staph infection. So he's recuperating from that. He's on his way to recovery, but he's at a medical resort, as they like to call it, and pushed him around. And I was talking to him about how bad the White Sox is, and even he's like, I've never seen it this bad. And my dad was born in the 40s, so he lived through the 1970 team and never thought he would see it get as bad as it did in 1970, and it just has. Well, the hope for the White Sox is by 2026, the club could have 3 young left-handed arms who dominate in Garrett Crochet, Noah Schultz, and Hagen Smith. Just imagine that in 2026. You could have Garrett Crochet, who's already established himself as an ace, Noah Schultz, who is reminding everybody of a young Randy Johnson, who hopefully has the command well ahead, right when he's ready to go, where Randy Johnson always struggled with his command until he finally found it, and then he became a Hall of Famer. And then Hagen Smith, one of the best left-handed college pitchers in the SEC, and who was your first-round pick. Imagine that. But Crochet is likely to be dealt this offseason as, the Sox do need hitting prospects, and he's probably the only one that's going to fetch you prospects that are close to the major league level that could even be studs, So at least there's a mitigate of the promise of Schultz and Smith have that the Sox could trade Crochet and potentially not miss a beat in their rotation. And that is where the hope is, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. Drew Thorpe, another righty who could be an ace in the mold of Aaron Nola or Mark Burley, at least from the right side of the mound. He's going to miss the rest of the season as he needs a bone spur removed in his arm, and there's no need to panic. Nobody's freaking out. The Sox have the depth in the system where if an injury robs the team of a player's promise, there's someone to fill in the hope or to, fill in, at least when it comes to hope. And Thorpe is expected to make a full recovery by spring training, and maybe that spur being fixed will help him throw more in the mid-90s to set up that outstanding changeup. Noah Schultz, though, he continues to be outstanding in his weekly Saturday 4-inning start as he threw on 831 for the Barons and allowed just 1 hit, walked 2, and struck out 7. No runs allowed. Continues to dominate. Hagen Smith made his second career start at High A Winston-Salem, gave up his first run in his professional career, and he was a bit wild. Hit 2 batters, but only walked 1, struck out 2 in 2 2/3 innings. I would like to see Smith start next season at Winston-Salem, at least for a month, and then move him up to Birmingham to see what he can do. I'd like to see him and Schultz get more than a once-a-week start, though, so those 2 arms can start to get used to a normal workload. You want to start building up that arm strength. I get them being very cautious with Schultz this year. I fully get it, but, next year you would like to see him maybe pitch more than just Saturday for 4 innings. And I know you and I are excited for both eventually getting to the big leagues, but with so much pitching depth, I would not be upset if both are not called up next season. I know people would be like, "Oh, we got to have them." Let's treat this as another developmental year next year. I know Hagen Smith probably should be. He's got the stuff to maybe even break camp, as they're saying, at the best case scenario. But I got no problem with taking their time with him to, with both of them. As Brian Bannister has said, it's about developing your best pitches, identifying what those best pitches are, and then throwing them a ton. Other news in terms of pitching for the Sox have James Fox of Future Sox tweeted this out at James Fox 917. Hashtag White Sox pitching prospects Grant Taylor and Sean Burke are expected to represent the organization in the MLB Fall League. Taylor should be one of the top pitchers in Arizona. First of all, it's good to see Grant Taylor will get some work at the Arizona Fall League. He's missed a lot of time this year with a lat injury, and it's also a sign that then his lat injury is healing up, that he should be able to throw at the Arizona Fall League. And he's another arm with ace potential. Sean Burke, he's another pitcher that I would love to see get a crack at the competition for the 5th starter spot next season. Heck, I would love to see him coming out of the bullpen this year. Bring him up, have him at least pitch out of the bullpen, this season. But in terms of finding someone to flip at the trade deadline, and that's the other thing, like guys like Sean Burke, Nick Nastrini, they give you where you probably don't have to spend a lot of your free agent dollars in the starting pitching market. Although I could see the Sox doing that again. And it doesn't hurt to sign a veteran like the club did with, say, Eric Fetty. But at the same point, the one area, again, you have covered in your system is starting pitching. So maybe use your limited free agent dollars elsewhere and give those young arms a shot. But I definitely would love to see Sean Burke on the roster next year, even if it's out of the bullpen. Although, again, I want to see him here now. That wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll be back tomorrow. Probably going to talk about Eloy Jimenez doing well in Baltimore, but it's still a deal that the Sox needed to make. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding the Sox setting the new franchise record for most defeats in the season, the Sox making the right call by promoting Jairo Iriarte and putting him in the bullpen, and this week's Minor League Monday report. You can leave those comments at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.